Kevin in Canada. You are live on the line. What's going on?
How are you?
Doing all right. What's going on with you?
What is your co-host name? I didn't catch your co-host.
I'm Luxander. Luxander.
Luxander, how are you doing today? Luxander?
Oh, it's Lux. I know it's hard to hear through the phone. Yeah, it's like
awesome. Well, It was nice to meet you both. It's the first time I've called into this show. I've called into the line a bunch. I called the Sunday show and the Tuesday show. I like calling into these types of shows because I like these types of conversations. I've learned a lot by listening to your show. Like, I used to be more, I'd say, I wouldn't say conservative, but like for the most part, like I've always been very pro, like people's right to be who they are, right not to be discriminated against, to work, to live. My big concern is in the arena of sports. Like, I'm completely fine with trans athletes in non-combat sports. Where I do have concerns, as someone with a long history of martial arts experience, like I did karate for many years, competed in that, briefly did Muay Thai, boxing, I do jiu-jitsu now. And I guess my concern is in the realm of MMA and like the more dangerous combat sports. There was recently a debate back in 2020 regarding Fallon Fox. I don't know if you're familiar with the situation that happened. So essentially, I'm actually going to read a direct quote from Fallon with regard to what happened because I want to let her speak. But she tweeted, there was a very controversial fight where she fractured a woman's skull. So she
a very common injury in that sport.
Yeah, very common injury, men against men, yeah. Less common women against women. But anytime someone's skull is fractured, that's very serious, very life-threatening. And obviously, number one concern in combat sports is we don't want the people to die. Like, people in boxing back in the day used to die all the time, especially, like, when they didn't really know about concussions. But I've had multiple concussions playing rugby, doing jiu-jitsu. Concussions are very serious, but never dealt with someone having a fractured skull. Now, we have very strict rules when it comes to things like Muay Thai. We never allow women to spar with men unless they're like competitive level and the guy like knows nothing, but that almost never happens. But generally speaking, it's very dangerous to pair someone with a denser bone structure against someone with a less dense bone structure. I want to quote Fallon Fox. She tweeted after the skull fracture. She said, "For the record, I knocked 2 women out. One woman's skull was fractured, the other not. And just so you know, I enjoyed it. See, I love smacking up turfs in the cage who talk transphobic nonsense. It's bliss." Now, that's very concerning to me, that kind of mentality. Like, I believe that politics should stay outside of the ring. Like, I don't care if you're conservative, liberal, whatever. When it comes to combat sport, there needs to be a basic level of respect for your opponent. Now, obviously, trash talk is a big thing. I follow MMA a lot. My brother's huge into the sport. It's a brutal sport, and people get seriously injured all the time. But the number one concern is always safety. There's a ref who will literally throw his body on a guy getting pummeled to stop a fight. And like they're bulky guys, they're big dudes. Like, I've seen some messed up stuff, but they care a lot about safety. Now, for a competitor to say that they enjoyed it and it was bliss, and you know, they talk about turfs, like, listen, as much as I want to say trans women can compete in swimming, which I have no problem with, or track and field, or volleyball, or you know, the non-contact sports, when it comes to stuff like rugby, hockey, MMA, things like that, I've seen women get very badly injured when they kind of make the mistake of thinking, yeah, I'll roll with the guys. And like guys generally don't want to, like, I'm talking about like a men against women. Now, trans woman is different because she went through hormone therapy, obviously. So there's to an extent a lesser punching power, but bone density never changes. Like, that stays the same.
Well,
and so
that's
no, it doesn't.
That's objectively, not true. One of the most common. one of the
well,
most
I'll
common.
accept-
No,
I'll
stop,
accept if I'm wrong, but, like,
You've run on for a long time,
narrow
Kevin.
but it doesn't go-
Stop. Holy cow. So we're gonna. I had to take notes because you said a lot of stuff
Yeah,
that I
dish
wanted
out
to
a little bit
address.
there.
I mean, so yeah, first of all, it's objectively not true that bone density doesn't change. It's one of the most common arguments against trans healthcare for young people is that it affects our bone density. So that's just objectively not true.
I stand corrected then. I apologize.
So
I'm not experienced in that.
quite a few things to address. I mean, first of all, you said you want to keep politics out of the ring, which I don't know how you can expect to do that when you are advocating for restricting trans women from competing. That is an explicitly political decision. It's
not political.
It is actually, Kevin. It is. The fact that you are going to discriminate against an entire group of people for traits that might only apply to some people within that group, that is discrimination. That is a political matter. Also, politics is in literally everything. Everything is politics.
I don't agree.
You're wrong. So to say that you can keep politics out of sports is
It's
just
a political
ridiculous.
decision. Yeah.
I believe it's a
also-
scientific decision. To be left to
No.
the scientists.
Well,
You don't know the
you don't-
science.
yeah, I was gonna say you haven't brought any science. So if you're
You
gonna say
explicitly said you
hold on,
don't know
I
it.
can bring science if you want. Like, if you want me to bring, but here's the statistics, right? Like, the reality is, like, that does happen in the sport. Correct. People do get their skull cracked, and yes, bone density can change. But as a general rule, people who are born male undergo hormone treatment don't necessarily have their bone density reduced to that of a biological female. Like, you can say yes, bone density changes, but I could.
You don't know
I've
that.
read
I
studies
think
on
you're
this,
just making a baseless claim, actually.
yeah.
I'm not. I've
Okay,
actually
well
read
then
the-
you're gonna need to send us some
There's a lot
actual.
of competing views on this.
Okay,
No,
I want empirical
not really.
views though. I don't really care what you just think or feel.
It's not my
Also,
feeling. I love the science.
okay, Kevin. Holy shit. I would like to respond, please. Also, I went looking up. You said, you don't really see it much in females, but you see it a lot in females. I went up to, I found a study almost instantly that talked about 30 injuries per 100 athletic exposures involve injuries with females, and that they actually don't differentiate. They differentiate between men and women on every aspect of injuries in this study, but they don't specifically with regard to skull fractures. So I'm not
I
sure.
would like to read that study. So make sure you have your the person who took the call. I'll speak to them after, but I want that.
Well,
email
I'm
from you so I
I'm
can
not
read
gonna
it.
I'm not gonna make my call screener do work for me. If you want to message me on
But
social
I'm not
media,
gonna-
I can
I'm not gonna
copy this
debate
link.
a study I've never read. Like, you're reading something you haven't even read the study.
You
just
keep
Kevin,
interrupting her.
Can you shut
She
the
was
fuck
going
up?
to send it to you. Oh
Yeah,
my god, you're
I
so
was-
rude, dude.
I was literally gonna say, if you
Okay,
want the
fine.
study, Kevin, shut up. Holy shit. If you want, see, you started this with some bullshit pronouns shit, so that's how I already know you weren't serious from the fucking get-go. And then you come in and
Okay.
you were incapable of having a conversation about it. So what I was trying to say was, if you want me to send you the study, I haven't looked at the study. This was literally a quick Google to reference if your point was accurate, right? Maybe there's a meta-analysis that you can send. I would love to read it. I'll be happy to send you the
I would
study. You
love
just
to read
copy the
about it
link.
now.
I just copied the link and you can reach out to me on social media. I'm not going to make my call screener do my work for me. So that's just not happening.
That's fine. I just thought you weren't going to do it, but the fact that you are willing to do it makes me understand that you're arguing in good faith. So we're good.
For the rest of this conversation, Kevin, if you will let her finish speaking, you will understand what she's saying instead of interrupting her and in order to argue against something that she wasn't even about to say. Be more polite, please,
No, I'm
so that we can
saying
have a
I
productive
agree.
conversation.
I
You know
appreciate
it, me as well. You're really bad at this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The other thing that I wanted to point out is that you were talking about how, differences between men and women are significant in sport. But there have been numerous studies that have shown that trans women, even pre-HRT, even who've gone through male puberty, are not identical to cisgender men at a baseline when it comes to athletics. So there's already some problems with this association of, oh, well, men do X, therefore it's okay to ban trans women. Also, I wanted to point out that you mentioned trans women who have gone through male puberty might maintain some differences, but that's not what you advocated for. You're advocating for trans women not being a part of contact sport. Not all trans women have gone through endogenous male puberty. So So what is that? Are you discriminating
Okay.
on science, or are you
Well, that's
discriminating
not
against a
necessarily my
basis?
argument. I could clarify if you want.
Okay, go for it.
Sure, it's
So
your
my
turn now.
clarification would be, I do have concerns about trans women that have gone through puberty. That's more my concern. Obviously, trans women that have transitioned pre-puberty, there's a whole different science there. And I'm not an expert on these issues. You are. So I'm arguing out of my depth. And it's a 2-on-1 argument. So I'm not trying to talk over you. I'm just trying to, like, when Matt talks and someone says something, he clarifies with questions. Not trying to be rude. So I apologize if I sound rude.
Thank you. I would like to point out that it's very interesting that you say, as a person who's in mixed martial arts, that you find it problematic for the like men versus women thing. I think in martial arts, it's like one of the sports in which skill makes the biggest difference. Like, I actually just covered a story on my show very recently. A young lady named Ansley Wilk, the whitest name I've ever seen in my life. She's an MMA fighter and she does jujitsu. And she was put against a trans female opponent, like a trans woman who was taller than her and at a different belt level. And because of her skill level, she won twice. So, like, even in the sport that you're talking about, you know, in order to justify the discrimination in any sport, I don't care which sport you're picking and choosing, you have to demonstrate that there is some kind of advantage. And you don't demonstrate that by measuring the size of people's hearts and their bone density. You measure that by actually seeing who competes well. Like on average, like trans women who are going into sports, they are required to be not only having been on hormones for a period of time, but a lot of the time they're required to have less testosterone than most cisgender women. So like they end up being fairly disadvantaged in some ways. And it seems to me that like most of the time people are okay with them playing so long as they're not winning, except in this case where this young woman beat this trans woman at the jujitsu, in which case she still decided to become really transphobic about it. That it's bad sportsmanship.
No, actually,
and here's another question that I have.
MMA.
Okay, well,
No.
Okay, I'm talking about something else.
Yeah.
I'm talking about a different example.
Sorry,
I'm not talking about Fallon
my bad,
Fox.
my bad.
Yeah, I'm talking
My
about
bad.
this cisgender woman who beat a trans woman in jujitsu, right? So it is a
Jiu-jitsu an
sport.
entirely different animal. I'm training in that right now, and
Contact
there are a
sports.
lot of, like,
You made
Yes,
black
Kevin.
you made a
belt
general
jiu-jitsu
claim
women that
about
are
contact
amazing.
sports. And so what I'm doing is I'm addressing the whole concept of contact sports and combat sports and like whether it's possible to do this in a fair way, right? Most trans women are required to have less testosterone in their bodies than most cis women in order to be allowed to be on these sports things. And speaking of the bad sportsmanship of this young lady who decided to be transphobic even though she won, you know, you pointed out the sportsmanship problem, I guess, with Fallon Fox saying that she enjoyed her fight with that woman. She claimed in that tweet that you quoted, if your quote was accurate, that she loves beating up on people who make transphobic statements. And so you said you wanted to keep politics out. And my question is, did you investigate to see what the statements were? If someone made a bad sportsmanship and like made politics in sports where it shouldn't have been, it wasn't Fallon Fox, according to your quote.
Well,
So
she
why
was
is the
faced
scrutiny
down
on
with
her?
a lot of, like, there was absolutely transphobic stuff, and I'm not going to deny that like people on the right didn't use this as like a flashpoint issue. Because like a lot of times people on the right will focus on the most extreme cases. Like another one was Hannah Muncie in handball in Australia. She got driven out of handball and switched over to Aussie rules football. But like Hannah Muncie, like 6'2", I think, like a big trans woman, and like absolutely obliterating. And like I get it. Like there are some women. Well, there's people on all sides of it, right? And when I look at a very complicated issue like this,
If you are concerned about how tall trans women are, then just have height and weight classes. You don't need to discriminate against people based on gender. Just have height and weight classes, or just force everybody to get a bone density test beforehand. Oh,
when it comes to,
you've already said that it's to discriminate.
And hear your opinion.
Okay.
Okay, so my idea is to have when it comes to like the more dangerous, like MMA, Muay Thai, things like that, jiu-jitsu is different because lots of women that are like black belts roll with men all the time. It's not rare at all, and it's not really that dangerous because rolling is like not really a dangerous activity. You're not punching someone, but it's different in actual striking sports. I guess a good compromise would be on the lines of, obviously, since it's a one-on-one sport, you need the consent of the person you're competing with.
Why?
But I think a lot of these women that were competing against her felt super pressured, and they were being called transphobic just for being hesitant to like when you the reality is in the fighting world, like they're like, do you want this fight or do you not want it? And they live off of this, and it's an extremely hard life. They'll train for 3 months, do one fight. They'll get battered, train for 3 months, do a fight. I've trained with guys that do it for a living, and it's brutal. It's a brutal way to make a living. So like you could say to this woman, here's Fallon Fox. She just cracked the skull of a woman. Do you want to fight her? Do you want the fight or not? Like when you put women in this position, and then when she's like, I don't know, maybe not, like my livelihood depends on this. And then when she says no, you're calling her transphobic. You're putting her between a rock and a hard place. Like,
Okay.
I don't think the woman.
No, I'm going to stop you, Kevin. I'm going to stop you. Kevin. Kevin. Hey, Kevin. I'm going to stop you. So I muted you because I'm going to stop you. If there is a significant majority that you can identify of people who are calling someone transphobic for denying a fight, which is, if that's commonplace, I don't know that that's actually the case. I'm going to take your word for it and assume that you're honest here. If that is the case, then it's wrong. People can deny fight just like, while your reasoning for not wanting to date a trans person may or may not be bigoted, you have the right to say, I don't want to date anyone you want. And if that's how, sports work, then fighting, MMA, then great, fine. Those people are wrong. Okay. But you keep bringing up this one person, Hannah Muncie, this one person, Fallon Fox, and these vague concepts of transphobic accusations that you are bringing up. But I don't care about any of that. We're talking about banning an entire group of people, an entire population from a activity that is welcome to everyone. If you're going to do that, you need damn good evidence, and it's not going to be fucking one story or 2 stories or 3 stories. You need data. When you brought up the fractured skull thing, what did I do? I went to Google Scholar and I found a study. I found data for you that can root out bias in these things. If you're going to if you want to advocate for discrimination against a group of people, you better have damn good fucking evidence. Because I'm going to tell you, what you have right now is a collection of anecdotes and crying about accusations of transphobia, which I do not care about. That is irrelevant and meaningless to me. I'm going to unmute you now. And this is where this conversation is going to go. I'm happy for you to, again, hit me up on any social media. I will send you that link that I just set aside for that one study. Maybe the study's bad. We can talk about it. If you're going to call back with this topic, you're going to bring data, because I do not care about you bringing up these sensationalized media stories about individual athletes who were involved in really normal situations, but that were made to seem bad because the person was trans. All right, so you're unmuted now. Okay, and I need you to listen.
Thank you for that.
I need you to listen when we're talking, because when I'm interrupting you on this show, it is not just because I'm like, man, I hate Kevin. I want Kevin to stop talking. It's usually because you've said something that necessitates clarification or an interjection. It's not about me trying to be rude to you. So I really need you to listen when I'm saying, hey, Kevin, I need you to stop. Hey, Kevin, I need you to stop. So I don't need to say it 5 times and mute you. Okay. I want this to be a conversation. This is an important topic. People have some strong feelings about it. I don't think it's I think it's 2 sides in the way that, vaccines and anti-vaxxers are 2 sides. But, I think, I need you to come with data, because every major sports organization already has policies on this, most of which are inclusive of trans people on the basis of science. So if you want to come at me with some actual facts, I'd be happy to have that conversation with you. But I'm telling you right now, I do not care about Fallon Fox. I do not care about Hannah Muncie. I do not care about Lia Thomas, who, by the way, it did not do that impressively and was beat several times after that. Like, it's, again, you can bring all these niche situations where it seems really inflammatory from a media perspective. When you actually break it down, it is wholly unimpressive. So if you want to come at me with some facts, we can talk about what maybe evidence-based restrictions or policies should or shouldn't exist within different athletic organizations. I'm comfortable with that, which is why I've been fine with the IOC guidelines. If there is demonstrable difference in performance based on certain factors and they want to have rules about that, that is well within their right, as long as you aren't discriminating against trans people on the basis of them being trans, because that is literally the outcome that you're advocating for. Mm-hmm. Like, it wasn't until I pushed it on the fact about like kids who don't go through male puberty that you started qualifying it, right? So let's actually have some evidence-based approaches to this and not just some stories that are really scary about combat sports, followed by you talking about how there's one combat sport where it doesn't matter at all.
Okay. Well, I mean, I can only speak from my limited knowledge on the matter. Like, you're very knowledgeable about it because you do the show weekly, right? So, again, I'm coming from a place of ignorance. And what I would like from this conversation, I'm always open to having my opinion changed. By watching the show for several weeks, on certain issues, I have had my opinion changed. And I think whenever you have a conversation with someone and your opinion gets changed, that's a good thing. That's not a defeat. Like, you know, learning something new and modifying your opinion is a sign of maturity. And I'm willing to acknowledge that there are absolutely trans women that, given the right circumstances and scientific backing, I could see compete. My only concern is that we do it scientifically. We consult with experts. We go through the steps. Now, from an earlier point, I had concerns was, I'm sorry, one more time on your name, your co-host?
Luxander.
You mentioned, I know it gets very heated around this topic, and I'm not trying to be a jerk or talk over you, so I apologize. But you mentioned something that I was a bit concerned of. You said, why don't we look at the numbers, like, from the results? And so essentially what you were saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying, let's just have trans women compete and see what happens and look at the numbers and run the data. I guess
like we've been doing for the last 20 years at the Olympics. Yeah, we've been allowing transgender women to participate at the highest levels of athletic performance on this planet, the global Olympics, and we have not seen any evidence of trans women sweeping the gold or cisgender men putting estrogen in their bodies so that they can compete and win. Like, you do need to. Okay, I want you to understand. This is why we get so heated about this. If you want to discriminate against a group of people, like, your burden of proof, when you say, I want to go to the science, I want you to understand that the burden of proof on you with your scientific evidence that you're looking for is astronomically high, because you need to justify beyond the shadow of a doubt that this is hurting cisgender women's competition in some way. And like, furthermore, like, I think that you are arguing from a place of emotion. And I think that the thing that you should study, more so than you should study transgender women's participation in sports, I think that what you should study is the performance levels between cisgender females and cisgender males. Because I've read up on the topic and I've looked at the studies, and it actually turns out that men have a slight strength advantage and women have a slight stamina advantage if you account for the fact that women's sports are dramatically underfunded. It turns out if you give them the funding, if you give them good coaches, they are competitive. Like, humans are very barely, only a very tiny bit sexually dimorphic. Like, the differences between males and females, like, on average, are not as different as people make it seem. Like, the idea that males and females are inherently different is like, we continually reinforce that by keeping women's sports segregated. Like, we continually reinforce the idea. If you tell a girl about to take a math test that, oh, on average, girls are worse at math than boys, she will perform worse on that test than a girl that you did not say that to. Correct. So, yeah, my opinion is that women perform worse in sports only because you keep telling them that they're going to perform worse. And that if you actually just level the playing field, take gender out of it, make it by height and weight and those kind. If you want to do it by testosterone levels, I don't give a shit. But like, don't say, oh, you know, based on how you grew up, you're saying based on how you grew up is what's going to determine whether you get to play in the sports. And like, I don't know how you plan to determine that. How do you plan to determine which people, like this level of medical invasiveness, like, oh, how old were you when you started testosterone blockers? Like, it's not realistic. And yes, you have a dramatically high burden of proof on this.
And
Arden has so much to say.
You mentioned a number of very valid points, and I'd like to address them all. I want to make sure I go through them systematically because you brought up 4 or 5 valid points. Now, there's absolutely, I'm a social scientist. I study economics. I did econometrics and things like that, more along the lines of international economics and things like that. But I've also studied a whole host of things. But anyway, I like to look at data on the large scale, right? I love to look at massive subsets of data. I'm not a data scientist, but I have friends that are data scientists. I was never smart enough to do it. But what I think is important is we take a look at all of the data for all the sports. And I agree 100%. No trans woman has ever won an Olympic gold medal since, I think, 2003. I want to say that's when I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to look it up.
Something like
but
that,
I'm going to read all the articles that Arden will send me, or I'll make sure to reach out to you and give you my email so that you can send me the literature, because I love reading science and I love educating myself. So if there's a blind spot as far as my own awareness of this issue, I want to know about it. But back to what you were saying, I think the most important thing you said is there's very little difference between men and women. That's so true in a lot of sports, like long distance swimming, for example. They actually find that women do much better in extreme distances.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, endurance.
A higher body fat. Like there's actually some sports that women do better. But for the most part, when it comes to things like, let's say, for example, the NBA versus the WNBA.
Oh, you mean a highly underfunded organization versus a super funded organization? Kevin, I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, Arden, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, no, Kevin. See, this is Kevin. Hey, Kevin, this is one of those points. Kevin. Okay, I'm muting you because you're really struggling with the point we said. Like, this is a point of clarification, right? That's why I'm interrupting you, because we literally had a conversation about how society and finances and things like that affects women's and men's performance. That was the first call we had to talk about how those things affect things. So yeah, I don't think bringing up differences in performance on average doesn't necessarily demonstrate a biological thing. But also I want to point out, you said studies, plural. I'm not doing your work for you. I have one study relevant to the point you made that I looked up. If you want to pay me, I will do research for you on trans athleticism, but I am not doing your research for you. I have the one study that was relevant to what we talked about. So again, I'm going to ask you, please listen when we're interjecting, because this is, first of all, our show. And second of all, it's about clarification. It's not me trying to take you off your path that you're on, because you got a little bit of co-host syndrome where you kind of just want to have the mic. And that's not how this works. So I'm going to bring you back. You're unmuted. I don't know if you want to continue on what you were talking about, your points.
At this point, I feel like it's touching a nerve, and I don't want to upset you. You know what? Like,
no, I'm going to mute you again. Don't come at me with this bullshit, it's touching a nerve thing. You are advocating for discriminating against an entire group of people, a group of which I'm a part of, for no other reason than it happened to me. So, get out of here with your bullshit, it touched a nerve thing, right? This is, trans people have remarkably high levels of suicide and depression because of this shit, Kevin. Because no matter where we go, we're not allowed to win. No matter where we go, we're not allowed to be loud in us publicly in your face, because people have all this bullshit. They heard one story here, they heard one story there that justifies treating us like garbage. So does this touch a nerve? I mean, in some sense, I think I'm being remarkably calm considering the circumstances here. I could go at you 10 fucking times harder than I am. I am trying to keep this show on the road because you like to go off on tangents. And we have tried to ask a clarifying question and you wouldn't shut the fuck up. So this isn't about me, oh, you're touching my nerve about, oh, this issue that affects me. No, this was me trying to make a clarifying point so we could have a productive conversation. Because I'm not out here to be nice and to be your friend. I'm out here to have productive conversations on trans rights. And if we're going off on a fucking tangent about something that's unrelated or not allowing clarification, it's not going to be productive. It's just going to be, let me dump all the bullshit that I've read online at you, and then you can dump all the bullshit you read online at me. That's not how it works here. So I'm going to unmute you again. You can either continue with your point or you can fuck off, because that's how this is going to go. And don't give me any of that patronizing, touching your nerve bullshit, or you will be banned, like full on.
Okay. I don't really know where to go from there. The point I was really going to make, I was going to make the point about NBA basketball being much better funded than the WNBA. You kind of took the words right out of my mouth. But when it comes to, like, we've dramatically increased women's funding on sports, and women have done much better on a lot of sports. Some sports, I think women, depending on it, they're all, like, every sport is different, is what I was trying to say. I actually believe that trans women should be allowed to participate in the vast majority of sports. I'm talking about almost all Olympic sports, pretty much every sport on a recreational level, high school level, college level. I agree with you on almost everything. And honestly, it hurt me for you to say that you think I'm responsible for trans women's suicide. Like,
Kevin, that is not what I fucking said. Kevin, that is Kevin, that is not what I said.
Tragic.
Kevin, okay, we're really struggling here. Can you hear me? Is my mic not working?
I hear you.
Okay, that is not what the fuck I said. So I'd appreciate it if you didn't say that I accuse you of being the reason for trans people's suicide. It's not at all what I said.
You said that rhetoric is responsible. You are engaging in rhetoric.
Also, we're getting feedback now.
Yeah, I can hear myself.
It's done. So wow, do you have it? Are we on speakerphone?
On.
Hello?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Hello?
Are we on speakerphone? What's going on?
Well, I'll take you off speakerphone. It's just when I'm sitting here, it's easier when the phone's not against my ear. But
well,
we could hear ourselves.
Yeah,
Sorry,
we were
it was
getting
feedback on the screen.
So I want to ask you.
You're cutting in and out. But this is what I'll do. I'll read the article that you recommend for me, and I'll review it. Like, as far as the data is concerned, I'm obviously not educating this. I'm speaking from a position of lack of education, and the reason why I call is because you're educated. Now,
but you
Kevin,
keep arguing. Stop arguing.
I'm not trying to argue. Like, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm not trying to argue in bad faith. So if I said anything that upset you, I genuinely apologize. Like,
okay, well,
this
I'm
is
not
me trying to have an honest conversation. Now,
so
if the
Kevin,
article does change my mind, I'll call back and I'll let you know. Like,
so I'm not completely convinced that you are arguing in good faith. Kevin, I'm not completely convinced you are arguing in good faith because do you actually, in your personal life, use dude and duder as your pronouns?
Well, my favorite movie is The Big Lebowski.
That's not what I asked. That's not what I asked. That's not what I asked. Do you actually use the pronouns?
People call me dude all the time. That's like the common thing I go by.
Kevin, I call people dude all the time. That's not a pronoun.
Yeah.
It could be.
Okay,
I could imagine it being. Kevin, holy shit. I could imagine it being a pronoun. Do you use it as a pronoun? When somebody says like, oh no, he left that in here. Did they say, oh no, dude left that in there? Does it fit grammatically where a pronoun does in a sentence?
Well, they'd be like, yeah, the dude left it in here. Like they
No.
like
Stop. Not the dude left it in here as a pronoun. Using it as a pronoun. Do you use it as a pronoun? Not a thing that people call you.
To me like that. Yeah, like
Kevin,
that's what I use.
You are okay. No, you are not honest because you are intentionally avoiding the question that you know that I'm asking you, and it's really fucking irritating.
Understand.
Okay, Kevin, when I say a pronoun and I say, oh, he wants to go to this place, and you say, the dude wants to go to this place, that is not being used as a pronoun. That's being used as a title there. I don't know if you know the difference between titles and pronouns. There could be, theoretically, someone who uses dude as a pronoun, and that's why I'm clarifying, because I want to know if you're honest, Kevin. But you keep avoiding answering the question honestly. I didn't ask you, did they say the dude, using it as your title? That may be true. I'm asking, do they use it as a pronoun? Think really fucking hard back to second grade when you learned pronouns. Do they use it that way?
Well, when I was in second grade, we were learning French because I'm from Canada.
No, Kevin, you're gone. I'm done with you, Kevin. You're a fucking bullshit liar. If you don't have education on a topic, you are not excluded from calling in. I want to have the conversation. But when you keep making claims that you can't justify and then saying, well, whoa, I'm not educated on the topic, so you can't pin me to that. That's why at the beginning of the show, when somebody asked me a question I couldn't justify, I withheld from answering because I don't have the qualifications to answer and I don't want to put myself in that exact spot. Holy shit. And with regard to the pronouns, look, there are a lot of like different unique neopronouns that are like individualized nowadays. It's totally possible that someone could actually legitimately use dude as a pronoun. And I was specifically trying to account for the fact that you might do that, Kevin. But you were so fucking incapable of honestly answering the question. It's genuinely, you say you want to have an honest conversation and I don't fucking believe you. Google what pronouns are. And then come back and apologize next week, and I'll consider having another conversation with you. Until then, you can fuck off.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jimmy Snow, executive producer of The Line, and the rumors are true. Forrest Valakai is, in fact, a hostage in my basement. If you would like to contribute to his freedom one day, you can do so by supporting us over on Patreon or becoming a channel member. There are specific tiers for specific shows or the channel at large. You can also send us super thanks. Those are great. You can like, comment, and subscribe. Also, fudge the algorithm. Go to one of these things. The algorithm doesn't matter. It thinks it knows you better than we do. Better than you do? I know you better. Hank. There's a bunch of people named Hank. I just freaked way out. Okay, go to one of these.